everyone. Welcome to UCLA Financial Wellness Program's Recession-Proofing Your Finances workshop. We are very excited to have you all here today. Anita, yes, we are happy you're here as well. Feel free to keep your video off if you would like, but if you would also like to pop it on and engage with us visually. I know some of us feed off the energy of seeing other students and other staff members during this time. We're more than welcome to do that as well. This program is being recorded and we will be uploading it to our UCLA Financial Wellness YouTube channel. So if you have friends that are not able to be here right at 3 p.m., it will be recorded and sent out to you all. As folks are joining, we also highly recommend that you follow us at UCLA Financial Wellness on our Instagram and on Facebook. Every day we're posting information related to your financial health and your financial well-being during this time that we're experiencing. I know it can be a big source of anxiety or concern for folks, especially now. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and explain a little bit about the Financial Wellness Program, what we offer, and who our presenters are here with you today. So I'll go ahead and I will start. My name is Sarah Potter. I'm the UCLA Financial Wellness Program Director. I've been with this program for the past 5 years. I did my undergrad at UC Santa Barbara and my graduate education at UCLA. And I am quarantining with my fiance. So we are pushing out our wedding that we were supposed to have in May, and we're going to be engaged for another year. So we are experiencing that life together right now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Janani, and I'm a programming peer coach at FWP. I'm a senior at UCLA, majoring in political sciences and minoring in digital humanities. And I am here quarantining with my roommate here in Westwood, so it hasn't been too boring. I'm glad that she's here with me. Yeah, I'll be helping Sarah moderate this event. And if anyone has any questions during the event, feel free to send it on the chat. We won't be saying your name to maintain anonymity, so don't worry about that. And we'll happily answer all your questions once all our coaches are done presenting. And yeah, we can so if all the peer coaches can introduce themselves, give their names, their major, and tell us who you're quarantining with, and then we can get started with the presentation.
I can go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Jasmine Weiss. I am a peer coach at Financial Wellness. I am a third-year business economics major and accounting minor, and I am quarantining with my parents and my puppy, who is right down here and is really excited to learn about finances.
I can go next. So hello, everyone. My name is Alma Ortiz. I am the administrative peer for FWP. So I'm the one that does all the scheduling and the emails. I'm a fourth-year psychology major and education minor, and I'm quarantining with my family back home in Lancaster, California.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yaslin Alonso. I'm the MSA graduate intern at FWP, and I am quarantining here with my family at University Village.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leanne. I'm also a programming peer, and I'm a fourth-year business economics major. I'm quarantining with my family back in Orange County.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angie, and I'm also a programming peer with the FWP. And this is my second year with the program. And I'm a fourth-year Busy Econ and Piano Performance double major with a minor in accounting. And I'm currently quarantining with my boyfriend in Westwood. So I'll be sharing my screen with you all, and then we can get started with our presentation. So before we start the presentation, I would like to quickly introduce what our program is for those of you who haven't heard of us before. So what Financial Wellness Program does is that we advocate for financial literacy, which is a very, very important life skill. But unfortunately, colleges usually don't offer financial literacy courses, and that's why our program exists. So as financial wellness peer coaches, we teach students very important financial topics such as budgeting, credit cards, navigating your student loans, and basics about investing. And the mission of the program is basically to empower other students to confidently navigate their finances in a way that support their overall well-being. And we offer 3 types of financial education for students. You can find all the resources on our website, which is right here. So the first resource that we offer is online education. You can find it right here. And then we also have workshops for clubs, organizations, even departments. You can schedule the workshops on this tab right here. And we also have one-on-one coaching sessions with our peer coaches. I believe, yeah, so you can just make appointment right here. And due to this current COVID-19 situation, we have transitioned our platform to online. And until this incident is over, we'll have all the presentations, coaching hours, and anything else basically online over Zoom. And so you can find all the coaching hours on our website right here. As you can see, we have hours for all documented students, for undergraduate students, for graduate students, and we also have specific hours for investing, if you're interested in this topic. With that being said, let's begin our presentation today. So before we start, just quick outline of what we're going to talk about during this presentation. So we will talk about how to navigate through the recession in the present as well as in the future. So in terms of present, we're going to talk about liquidity, what it is, why it's important, and how it can help you. I'm going to talk about elements to be aware of for financial security, how to manage your money as now during this coronavirus time, and things you can do with your stimulus check. I'm sure a lot of you probably heard of it, probably already received it. And how to deal with unemployment, what you can do to succeed. And we're also gonna give you guys the resources for finding jobs during this time, what companies are hiring, what companies having hiring freeze right now. We're gonna also talk about some, sorry. Let me go back. We're also going to talk about some side hustles, idea to increase your income, and then the student relief programs, as well as food security options. In terms of how to navigate through recession in the future, we'll talk about how to start saving, how it can benefit you in the future, deciding what priorities are financially for the future, as well as knowledge on how to invest your money. And in the end, we'll give a quick summary of everything that we talked about and leave room for some questions. So first, what to do in the present. So what is liquidity? Why is it important? So basically, liquidity is the ability you have to convert any asset into cash quickly. So when you talk about investments, your liquidity is basically how easy it is to buy and sell. And cash is probably one of the most liquid assets since you can use it basically to buy anything. And many stocks traded on major exchanges also considered fairly liquid since you can convert them into cash quickly and easily because you can probably always find another investor willing to buy your shares. But why is it important that we care about it? Well, we want to have a nice balance between highly liquid assets and the lowly liquid assets. Assets with lower liquidity might give you some benefits, such as maybe like potential for like long-term gains, but really you have to be in a situation where you don't have to sell them. Yeah, so it's important that you have some of your wealth in assets that you can sell quickly if you need it in case of recession happens, and you might need to have some cash in hand just in case.
Okay, hi everyone. Now I'm going to talk about how you can achieve financial security during these times. So the first element of financial security is income stability. And this just means how you can maintain stable sources of income, whether that be from the current jobs you're working, any side hustles you're working, or unemployment benefits that you qualify for. Right now, during the pandemic, if you apply for unemployment benefits, you'll receive the $450 per week from California, and you'll also receive an extra $600 per week from the federal government for up to 4 months. The second element of financial security is cash savings. As Angie mentioned before, it's very important to have like very liquid assets you can access right now during an emergency. So it's important to try to save at least 3 to 6 months for your cost of living. We're going to talk a little bit later about how to build an emergency fund. The third element of financial security is insurance coverage. It's really crucial to be covered at all times. So even if you've recently lost your job, it's important that you access sites like healthcare.gov or other marketplace exchanges to look at options and make sure that you're always covered. If you've recently been furloughed from your job, you can still receive insurance from your employer. And lastly, the fourth element of financial security is access to credit. You can access your credit multiple ways. So the first way we recommend here is to get your free annual credit report. This is a hard credit check, so when you do these checks, it will impact your credit score. So to get a really detailed report, we would recommend that you just check this once per year. But if you'd like to check this very frequently, then you can go on soft credit check sites like creditkarma.com or creditsesame.com, and these won't impact your credit score at all. And when you go on these sites, you can see who your lenders are in case that you really need to take out a loan. We also recommend that you check the soft credit score sites often now because fraud is a lot more frequent during a pandemic. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how we can manage money during these times. If Angie can pull up the site we have listed here. Okay. So this is just a really helpful worksheet, and we're going to be sending this out later so that you guys can take a look at it. So first, it's important to know where you stand. So just having an updated list of how much money you have in like cash and investment accounts, just seeing like how much you have saved in checking accounts, savings accounts, retirement accounts, and just keeping this updated as frequently as possible so you know how much you have and how much you have to work with and budget with. Next, you want to look into how much debt you currently have in credit cards, student loans, mortgages, etc. The reason you want to look into your debt right now is because if you need to have more access to cash currently, it's recommended that you just pay the minimum amount required for your debt so you have more cash on hand. And later we're going to talk about other types of debt such as student loans and mortgage relief, but we're going to go more into detail about that later. The third point is cut down where you can. So it's important to focus on current expenses that are most important right now, like your rent payments, food, insurance, transportation, things like that. And then worry about repaying debt later on and contributing to your retirement fund later on. Also limit cash flow on unessentials. So if you can cut down on any subscriptions you have, maybe to like Hulu, Netflix, any gym memberships, if they're not a priority, then you can limit that for now to increase your cash savings. And lastly, build your support system. So look into emotional support, just reaching out to your family, friends for that support, or even for financial support if you do need to borrow from them. And lastly, keep a list of resources of professionals you can reach out to, like your CPA, financial advisors, student loan creditors. It's just nice to have those on hand in case you need to contact them. Okay, so a lot of us have recently received our stimulus checks, and now we're just going to briefly cover what your priorities should be for spending that. So first, as we mentioned, it's important to cover basic expenses first. Focus on food, shelter, bills, anything that's current first. Then work on building an emergency fund or a savings account. We're going to go into more detail about that soon. Then you want to pay down any high interest debt that you have. This wouldn't be a priority, but just paying down like any high interest ones first, and then making the minimum payment for other debt payments. And then after that, you can look into investing money. Some good options are high yield savings accounts. The reason why we'd recommend these is because the interest rate you earn from these are much higher than an average savings account. And these are really liquid, so you're able to pull money out of them at any time. Some sites we'd recommend are like Marcus.com or Ally.com. Another great source for investing is certificate of deposits. These ones are less liquid because you have to put the money in for a set amount of time before you can receive the amount of profit you made from it. But these also have really high interest rates. And then lastly, if you want to invest in something riskier and achieve higher returns, then you can look into stocks. Some sources you can look into are like Robinhood or sites like Vanguard, Charles Schwab, Fidelity, or your credit union. Okay, so what to do about employment. So if you've recently lost your job, you can first reach out to your network. Talk to your friends, your family, see who you know that's hiring. And your UCLA network is also a great place to reach out to see what's out there and available. Virtual interviews, you should focus on interviewing and preparing just the way that you would for an in-person interview. So just practice with questions, practice preparing the same way you would for an in-person interview. If you've recently lost your job, apply for unemployment benefits. So here we just linked the site you can go to apply for unemployment. Right now it's really piled up, so we recommend that you apply for it as soon as possible. It takes about like 2 weeks for you to receive your money. As we mentioned earlier, $450 per week from California, on top of the $600 per week from the federal government. And now people who are self-employed and part-time workers can also qualify for the unemployment benefits. Next, keep motivated and apply for jobs. Make sure to update your resume and really do your research. If you're focusing on working remotely, then you can go and adjust the advanced job search settings so you can look for just jobs that are provided virtually. If you have like special skills that you want to focus on, you can also adjust that in the advanced job search. And if you're willing to go out and work jobs that are not virtual, right now there's something called hazard pay that's offered, meaning that you're going to get an increase in your pay hourly because of the risk of putting yourself out there. So for example, if before you were being paid around $12 an hour for working in person, this could be up to 14 or more. Okay, so here's just some popular jobs right now that are in demand. We have some listed here, such as like customer service representatives, transcriptionists, virtual assistants, online tutors, web designers, truck drivers, stock clerks, food delivery. So these are just some popular ones that you can look into. And some useful sites that you can access to look at these jobs are WayUp, Indeed, Handshake, Career Builder, Virtual Vocations, or remote.co.
Hi, everyone. So here are just some extra resources. As Sarah said in the chat, we're going to send the slides out so you can click on the links and, you know, don't worry about like writing this down. You'll have it soon. But yeah, here you can see that there are like virtual career fairs, and some of them, like the website that is called Candor, it lets you know which industries are hiring, which ones are not hiring. So these are just really helpful ones that you can look into. Next, please. For side hustles. Okay, so we're all using Zoom, most likely. Something that I think is a way you can profit is, you know, being like a trainer, a non-professional Zoom trainer, just helping maybe people that may not really know how to use Zoom, just help them out. You know, you could probably make some money off of that. This really fun way to make some money is to take something that you're passionate about and make it, you know, just profit from it. So for example, if you're good at cooking, you can start making YouTube videos, or I've seen people like on Facebook, you know, offering to draw graduation photos, and they're getting paid for that. You can play music on YouTube, just stuff like that all over. As for social media influencer, you know, TikTok, it's becoming extremely popular. You can definitely blow up on that. The Etsy store is also an option if you're very creative and you're really good at like making little trinkets, or you're really good at art. And then, as said before, a graphic designer would also be something that companies are looking for, and just something that you can do yourself. Next, please. Yes. So, as for student relief programs, for student loans, federal student loans, also known as subsidized direct loans, unsubsidized plus loans, all of those are automatically deferred until September 30th. What that means is that you won't have to make payments on them, and interest won't be accruing during that period. So this is done automatically, but it's always nice to just verify with your loan servicer through that website right there. Just chatting with them online or calling them up, asking if for sure everything's like put on hold. If you have Perkins loans or university-based loans, which are not federal loans, you can call those places, Heartland ECSI, or your loans collections office counselor at UCLA, and just ask them if they're putting anything on pause, if you have any options. For private loans, you can also just ask your loan servicer and ask if they have any options, if they maybe are, not letting interest accrue, if they're delaying payments. Just, it's important to ask and really advocate for yourself. For rent, we recommend going to, if you have any questions about that, going to the student legal services, my bad. And if something that's really important is just talking to your landlord in general, just asking them for their options. I know some landlords are pausing rent payments, and it says some are even offering like 60 days, no payment. Others are pausing or even suspending evictions up to like 30 and 90 days. I'm sure most of you have heard about the CARES Act eviction protection, and that one is basically saying that 120 days of eviction relief are going to be available for tenants and federally backed housing. And it might be hard to know if your apartment is that or not, so it's always best to just ask your landlord what your options are. And yeah, they may not, because of this act, they are not allowed to charge you late fees, penalties, or other charges like paying, like if you pay your rent late. It's also important to know who your housing advocates are. This would be social services around, or maybe, somebody who helps with the apartment or just like the area around. It's always good to go ask them for help. They would be very happy to help you. As for credit, I know right now it's a really hard time to start paying if you have debt, or sometimes even just regular card payments. It's really important that you contact your credit card company. A bunch of them are available, like Bank of America, for example. They are offering things such as lower credit card debt payments, or they are delaying your payments, or they're even lowering your interest rates. You can find out if they are offering these things by just going to their website, or even just calling or visiting that Experian website. Next, please. As for food sources, the UCLA ECRT, also known as Economic Crisis Response Team, they are still doing meal vouchers. So meal vouchers are these little like tickets for you to have to use at the dining halls, and yeah, they're free. You get up to 30, I believe, the first time you apply, or is it 15, 30, around that. That is still happening. As for UCLA CalFresh, they are also still accepting applications. Right now, they are having a lot of people apply, so they even took out the interview that you would usually have. But yeah, the website is pretty easy to find, and it's very user-friendly. The UCLA CalFresh initiative is even holding office hours where you can ask them any questions, or they can even help you with the application. So it's super, super helpful. You can get up to $192 a month, but because of this whole crisis, they're actually expanding the funds. So that's also really nice. Another source is local food banks. I know some churches are doing this, or some schools are just providing like free lunches. just look up on like Facebook or just search it up, and I'm sure there'll be some food sources for you. The CPO Digital Food Closet. So because they're not really operating anymore in person, they are offering these gift cards. So they have 2 different cycles. The first cycle was week 2, so that already passed, and you could get up to 3 gift cards. But the second cycle is actually next week, I believe before Monday of the next week. And you can get 2 gift cards. They're up to $75, and they're for like Target or Ralph's. But yeah, they'll send it over in the mail and you can use them and eat. Next, please.
Okay, so this is on to what to do in the future. So we've sort of covered, with the current circumstances, what can we do to alleviate any financial burdens? And now we're going to move on to, in the future, when we all come out of this crisis, what can we do to better secure our financial positions? And so we're going to start with saving. And, we've talked about the importance of having an emergency fund now. If you were not in a position to have one now, that's totally fine. But hopefully in the future, we can navigate different ways to build that over time. And a lot of financial advisors like to think of emergency funds as like a personal insurance policy for your finances, right? And so they give an example of, it's sort of like a safety net in case something unexpected comes up. And a great example is a global pandemic. That is a good time to have an emergency fund built up. So the general rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months, but like with most of what we talk about in finances, it really depends on your personal situation, and you want to account for any other extraneous factors and consider that when you're building your fund. But if you're just getting started, a good rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months of basic expenses. And the first step to building an emergency fund is to actually understand how much do I spend in a month, right? So this sort of ties in with budgeting. This is a great time to start budgeting and track down all of your monthly expenses. Look at the basics, figure out how much that costs, and then multiply that by how many months you would like to have an emergency fund for. So if you have basic monthly expenses of $1,000 a month and you want to have a 6-month emergency fund, that's going to be $6,000. The next step is obviously putting money into an emergency fund, right? And some of us might not have $6,000 on hand, and that's totally okay. In many ways, when they say pay yourself first, that can totally include an emergency fund. So you can just put in little amounts over time and build it up over time. You don't have to think of it as like a lump sum. After you do your calculations, you don't have to freak out and think, oh my God, I need to have $5,000 in my emergency fund by tomorrow. It's totally okay. It's something that you build up over time. And the great thing about that flexibility is that, let's say you hit that 6-month mark, like you can totally continue to save in that account, right? At some point, you might want to move some discretionary income into accounts that might yield greater returns, like investments, which is something we'll talk about. But you definitely don't have to cap it off at 6 months. If you've built that, you can continue to like contribute a little bit amount of money each month, and just think of it as like paying yourself first. And you can almost treat it as like a regular monthly bill while you're building it, like utilities or rent. Now, where to keep an emergency fund is also important. A big mistake I don't want people to make is to think like, oh yeah, I'm going to put my emergency fund in the stock market, right? One of the first concepts we talked about is something called liquidity, and liquidity has a lot of implications when it comes to saving and investing. So when we have an emergency fund, in that word, we have emergency. So we want to be able to pull that money out quickly in the case that something comes up that's unexpected. So what we're looking for is accounts with relatively high liquidity. So this does not mean investment accounts. This does not mean putting it in a stock and bond market or in mutual funds. And even though stocks are pretty liquid, because of the volatility, that's not a good place to keep our money. So we want to find a nice balance between liquidity, but also like a smooth rate of return. So there are a couple options. You can definitely keep your emergency fund in a regular savings account. But one of the drawbacks with regular savings accounts is that they offer pretty low rates of return. Annual percentage yields is what it's called. And because of that and how inflation works, it might end up eating into your profit over time. So sometimes there is a trade-off. Savings accounts are really, really safe, but because of that, you're not really earning much money. If you want to earn a bit higher rate of return, there are a few options you have that are still pretty liquid and safe. And those are covered below. We talk about money market accounts and high yield savings accounts. And there's also a third one, which is certificate of deposits. And these were all briefly touched on. I'll touch on them just a bit more. Money market accounts and high interest savings accounts are pretty similar. A lot of traditional banks and online banks and credit unions will offer them. The main difference is that a high interest savings account, you usually don't really get a checkbook or a debit card. With a money market account, you do. The difference between the two really depends on the specific institution you're looking at. Both will come with minimum account balances. So for example, like for a money market account, maybe you need to have a minimum of $5,000. And for a high interest savings account, you need to have a minimum of $6,000. It will really vary by institution. And it is important to know what those minimum balances are, because if you go under that balance, you'll be charged a monthly fee. So that is one thing you want to consider. Another limitation that also plays into why there are higher interest rates on these accounts is that they're limited transactions. So you can't treat these accounts like regular checking accounts. You might be limited to like maybe 5 or 10 transactions per month. It again varies by institution. But the main difference between the two is really, it depends on the institution you're looking at. The restrictions will vary based off of how many transactions you can make, what your minimum balance is, and what those monthly fees are if you go below that minimum balance. And both of these are also FDIC insured up to $250,000, which means that if something happens, your institution goes bankrupt, you will get that money back up to $250,000. The third one, which isn't on here, but I want to cover really quickly, is CDs, which are certificates of deposits. They're pretty safe investments, and basically I think every like financial institution, bank will offer them. And they offer a fixed interest rate for a fixed term. So what that means is that they are less liquid, as in you give a bank your money now and they say, okay, we will give that money back to you in a year plus this interest rate. So they are less liquid. However, some banks will offer like no penalties if you want to pull out your money sooner in an emergency. The banks that offer higher interest rates usually have more restrictions, so they might penalize you if you pull that money out. So what we see with liquidity and savings accounts is, there's always trade-offs. So you want to ask yourself, this is sort of like a general trend in finance, when you are getting like a higher rate of return, you always want to ask yourself like, okay, what does that opportunity cost? Like what additional restrictions are there? So there are opportunity costs with each of these, but a lot of them offer good benefits, and all three are FDIC insured. And these are all great places to park your money for an emergency fund. And so now, if we're good there, I think we can move on to the next slide. Picking priorities. This is something I want to touch on, in that, I think a lot of people are faced with situations where they think, okay, well, now I want to build this emergency fund, right? Because as we see situations come up and we want to be able to access a lot of cash. But you might also be in a situation where you are facing down a lot of debt, right? You might have student loans, mortgage payments, car payments, and you might have credit card debt. Some of these loans might carry really high interest rates. And so a conundrum that a lot of people face is like, where do I put my money? Especially if you don't have a lot of discretionary income, it can sort of be hard to prioritize where that money goes first. And again, with everything, it always depends on your personal situation, and you have to take into account your personal circumstances. But I always go with moderation is key, and you want to find a balance. So I know that if you're facing a lot of like aggressive debt with a high interest rate, you might be really tempted to pay all that down first. And depending on the situation, that might be what's best. But if you also don't have anything in your emergency fund, you don't have a lot of money in savings, and you decide to put all of that money towards paying down debt, if another emergency or unexpected circumstance occurs and you don't have any like liquidity to draw from, you're just gonna put yourself into even more debt, and it'll sort of be this vicious cycle. So it really depends on personal circumstances, but if possible, I think it's important to, pay yourself first, put some money into an emergency fund or into savings, and put some money to pay down debt. And, of course, you want to pay down your debt with the highest interest rate first, and figure that out. And you also, want to consider like, okay, maybe I'll just put this amount into my emergency fund. And then once I pay off this more aggressive loan, then I will start putting more money into my emergency fund. Or, you get to the point where like, you're like, I have this solid 6 months of basic expenses covered. I should really start focusing on paying down some more debt while I can. Because the advantages of paying down debt now, especially with high interest rates, is you'll save money in the long term, because the sooner you pay down debt, that's less interest that will accrue over time. And especially at higher interest rates, it can really add up. But again, you don't want it to be a vicious cycle where you're so focused on paying down your debt that when something comes up, you have no cash to draw from, and you end up putting yourself, in an even worse financial position. So again, you have to consider your personal circumstances, but I think that if it's possible, if you have that wiggle room, it's good to sort of strike a balance between the two. And if you have more questions on how to do that, you can always make an appointment with us, and we can definitely, get into the nitty-gritty and help figure out a financial plan for you. And now I think we are ready to talk about investments. If we can go to that slide. Okay, great. So, and I know a lot of you guys have had questions about investments, so we can definitely address those in more detail at the end of this or during coaching hours if you make an appointment. But there are different levels to investing. And as I talked about before, it's savings. The investments that offer high rates of return, there's going to be a reason why. It might be more risk. It might be the term and how long you hold on to that asset. So you always want to consider when you're getting a higher rate of return, you always want to question, why is this a better rate of return than putting my money somewhere else? Because there's always trade-offs. So I always recommend starting with tax-favored investments. Let's say you're at a point where you have a lot of discretionary income. You've built up that 6-month emergency fund, right? And you are paying down your debt and you're doing great. And you're like, I really want to get a hold of my financial future and I want to start investing. And I know, everyone's first thought is always, okay, like I want to put my money in the stock market. And while it's a great place to start, I personally really believe in parking that money first into tax-favored investments. And the best one for young people is something called a Roth IRA. That is an individual retirement account. And a Roth IRA is really unique in that it offers tax-free growth. So the way you can picture that is the money that you put into your Roth IRA is money earned. You take it from your paycheck, which has already been taxed, and you put it into your Roth IRA. As that money grows, there will be no taxes once you take it out. It is called tax-free growth, and that doesn't really happen in the investment world. And that is huge because, taxes and fees and commissions, they're all things that eat into your profitability. So I always suggest starting with the Roth IRA, even though it is a retirement account and it is for the long term. And I think that, detracts some people, you really can't beat the tax advantages of a Roth IRA. There's also something called a traditional IRA, and that is if you make above the income limit for Roth IRAs. So that would be if you're making more than $124,000 and you're filing single. Even with traditional IRAs, there are ways you can roll it over to a Roth IRA, but that's more complicated, so we won't get into that. But basically, you always want to start with tax-favored investments because less taxes you're paying, that means more money in your pocket. So you can't beat the tax advantages of a Roth IRA. Now, let's say you max out your Roth IRA account, and that's $6,000 for 2019. You max out your account, you still have discretionary income, you're doing great, you're on a roll, and you're like, all right, I want to keep investing. Let's look at some traditional investment accounts. So what you can do is you can open an investment account through different avenues. The two main ones are a traditional brokerage firm or a robo-advisor. So a traditional brokerage firm looks like Schwab, Vanguard, Fidelity, TD Ameritrade. And those are, really reputable firms, and they have a really diverse array of assets you can invest in: stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Then we also have robo-advisors, and robo-advisors are sort of the new kids on the block. A lot of them operate on something called modern portfolio theory. You don't really need to worry about that, but basically, I think in some ways, if you're a hands-off investor and you're just getting started, they might be better because you log on, you put in your information, and they'll sort of construct this portfolio for you based off of your time, your timeline, your risk preferences, your income. But you can't really go wrong between the two. You have to really look at the nuances to determine if there's really an advantage to one over the other. If you are going the route of robo-advisors, Betterment and Wealthfront are the two best. My personal favorite is Betterment. And then again, with traditional brokerage firms, Schwab, Vanguard, Fidelity, TD Ameritrade are all great, brokerage firms to look at. Now, there are also lower risk investments, and I've already sort of talked about those. There's CDs and there's bonds, and bonds are really similar to CDs in that, there's sort of a fixed term and a fixed interest rate. But bonds are different than CDs in that it's not really a financial institution. It can be like a government, like a municipality, or it can be a company like Apple, right? And it's sort of like you're giving them out a loan. You give them the money, and they say, we'll pay you back in 5 years with this interest rate. Bonds tend to be a little bit safer, and because they are a little bit safer and less volatile, they offer lower interest rates on average than stocks or mutual funds. And again, the trade-off I want to emphasize here is like risk versus reward, right? You know, in the stock market, can you make a lot of money? Yes, but you can also lose a lot of money. So the key to investments is really diversification. I know it's not mentioned in here, but you really want to think diversification. You know, you want to find a good mix of getting a solid rate of return, but, you know, not being at a huge risk to yourself. And the nice thing about being young and being in college is that we can really afford to take more risk because we are holding on for the long term, especially with the Roth IRA. Like, you can afford to have an asset allocation that is pretty risky right now, since we are holding on, and we know that over time markets correct themselves and usually go up. So I know that was a lot of information. Thank you for bearing with me. Again, we can answer all of your questions. I see a lot popping up in the chat box, but this is just a general overview. And if you have more questions and you want to get more in depth and start investing, I 100% encourage that. And you can always make an appointment with a financial wellness coach. We have specific investing hours just to talk about this. So definitely consider that. We also go live on Instagram on Wednesdays from 1 to 1:30 and specifically answer investing questions. So that is investing, and I think we're wrapping up. I'll go over the conclusion really fast. Basically, what we covered in the first half are things you can do right now to take a hold of your financial security. We addressed liquidity, managing your current finances, finding different side hustles and alternative streams of income, and taking advantage of relief programs, food resources, deferring loan payments, etc. For the future, what we covered is building an emergency fund, striking a balance between saving and investing and paying off debt, and different investment strategies with an emphasis on those tax-favored investments such as Roth IRAs. And that is everything we covered. That was a mouthful. And I don't know if anyone's doing this part, but in case anyone hasn't said it, thank you guys so much for coming. And we are really glad that so many people signed up. You know, we want to continue to offer resources to everyone in whatever capacity we can. And the journey does not stop here. You know, if this has inspired you, check out our resources, go to our social media, schedule an appointment with us. We love to have you all.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions from everyone, which is great. And if anyone has any more questions, please feel free to ask any questions that you may have in mind. Yeah, even though a lot of them were answered, we can, go over all of them. And if any one of our peer coaches wants to answer it, feel free to do so. The first question that was asked was, what's the difference between low and high liquidity? So if one of our peer coaches wants to talk about assets that are liquid versus assets that are not.
Yeah, I can jump in really quick. Something that has a really good sense of liquidity means you can access that money right away. So a savings account, a checking account, a high yield savings account, that's something where you can get your money right away when you need it, as opposed to something like a retirement account, or if you're investing your money in property, that's something that you can't really access right away. If you have money in a retirement account and you need to take it out early for something other than education or maybe buying your first home, you can be taxed and lose about 1/3 of the money that you're taking out of your retirement account early. So you want to make sure that right now, during uncertain times, you have most of your money in a place where you can easily access it.
Okay, yeah, we can go on to the next question now. The next question was, where can I create a Roth IRA? So, Alma, I know you have one and
Yes,
created
so-
one recently, so if you want to offer some insight.
I personally use Betterment. It's super easy. You just put like the age you think you want to retire, and you could put automatic deposits. So you could do like even as little as like $10 a month. You don't really need to be investing a lot. even a little just helps a lot. And Jasmine is a lot more knowledgeable about that.
Yeah, Alma basically covered everything, and I did not know you got with Betterment. That's awesome. I love Betterment. You can, basically invest through a brokerage firm, a robo-advisor like Betterment or Wealthfront. I think even some banks offer it. You can check with your institution. But a lot of the popular brokerage firms where people open Roth IRAs are, like I've mentioned, Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab. Those seem to be the three most popular ones. And I think it's important to emphasize that a Roth IRA is sort of like a place that you park your money, right? So it's sort of like opening up any other type of account. You open it up with the institution that you choose, and then you link it to your checking account or another account, and then you put money in there, you fuel it with money, and once you open that account and you have money in there, then you choose how to invest it.
Thank you, Jasmine. Our next question is, do high yield savings accounts require minimum balances like money market accounts?
I noticed Sarah said something about that because I thought they did, but it looks like most of them don't. So I will let her take over and correct anything I might have said.
Yes. So at the Financial Wellness Program, if you have some money in savings right now and you want a really safe way to earn money off your savings, one of our biggest tips is to open a high yield savings account. There's a lot of online financial institutions that can offer this. I personally have a high yield savings account at marcus.com. So just to give you all some perspective, right now, if you have a traditional savings account, normal one through some place like Bank of America, you're getting 0.06% back on your own money. If you put this into marcus.com, let's say, you're getting 1.55% back right now on your own money. So that has dipped down a bit. Usually pre-pandemic, it was about 2% that you would receive back on your money. So it's a great way to make, for sure, interest money on your savings. And you do not, with marcus.com, you do not need a minimum amount that you put in there. In terms of accessing your money, you can transfer money from your marcus.com or any online high yield savings account directly into your normal checking account, usually within 24 hours. So you can access your money within that amount of time. Good question.
Our next question is, once you open a Roth IRA, do you have to stick with that institution? And are there any requirements to opening one up? So are you allowed to transfer your funds, basically?
I will cover the part about the minimum, the requirements. So basically, there are a few things to know. One is that right now the contribution limits are $6,000, but those do change. In 2018, it was $5,500. So you can't contribute more than that. You also can only put in money that you've earned. This is a concept that kind of confuses people. So the example I use is that, let's say that you got a summer internship and you made $5,000 and then you traveled and you spent it all, okay? And you didn't have a Roth IRA. But then in November, your birthday comes around and your parents say, like, you worked really hard, we're gonna open up a Roth IRA for you and you can and we'll give you $5,000 to put in. Because you earned $5,000 that year, that is totally fine. You can put in that money because you've earned it. So it doesn't need to directly come from your paycheck, as long as at one point during the year you earn that amount of money. But you couldn't, however, put in the whole $6,000 because you had only made $5,000 that year. So the time you really need to take this into account is if you are making less than $6,000 or whatever the annual contribution limit is. You can't put in more than the amount that you have earned. So that is one thing that you have to be aware of.
Yeah. And I know Alma kind of answered this, but if someone asked, do you have any budgeting apps that you like? I started with Mint, but I don't really like it. Yeah, so if anyone has any additional recommendations, Alma recommended Every Dollar. But if you have any other ones that you personally really like.
Another one that I know of is called Pluto, and that one was actually created by UC alumni, and it uses this like geospatial, something. And basically that means if you, let's say you spent $50 at Target 1 week, and then you walk by there later that week, and it gives you a little notification like, oh, you already spent $50 here. Are you sure you want to spend more? I know that, some people need that reminder, but some people don't like it. So there's a lot of options on the App Store that definitely work.
Yeah, Sarah already answered this, but I'll just repeat it. So someone asked, is it better to pay credit cards or student loans at this time? To which Sarah answered credit cards because of the higher interest rate. And then trying to see if there are any other questions. Yeah, someone asked if we can file for unemployment if we used to have an on-campus student job and no longer work that position. And yeah, the answer to that is yes, you can file for unemployment in this case. And yeah, if anyone has any additional questions, we still have a couple of minutes left. And yeah, if any of the peer coaches want to add in anything else, please, and feel free to check out our website. If you want a one-on-one coaching session with us, please do book an appointment. We have many hours throughout the week, and for undergraduate students as well as graduate students.
There's
Yeah,
one quick
yeah.
thing I just want to add for folks asking about unemployment right now. We will send out the link to filing for unemployment. It's through EDD, and the link is in the slides that we'll send out. When you file for unemployment, the application process will ask you questions like how many hours of work and how much pay did you receive between this date and this date. So you'll want to make sure you look at your old payment stubs or your old deposits from your job and be able to enter that information. It'll also ask you for information about your last employer. It'll ask you if this is related to a COVID-19 reason of why you were let go from your job. And you usually hear back from them within 10 to 14 days. You'll initially get a first letter saying that your application has been submitted and they're reviewing it, and they'll let you know how much they anticipate you to receive from both your state and from the government. And then after that, you will receive a card that has a debit amount of money on it. And you will have to then transfer. You can use that card for expenses, or you can transfer money from that debit card into your checking account that you normally use. So that's kind of what the process looks like. As peer coaches mentioned, they are a little bit backed up right now. So if you can submit your application now, the better. There were also questions about opening Roths. One thing that we do recommend looking into is something called a target date fund. A target date fund, Jasmine's getting excited about this. A target date fund looks at the expected year that you think you will retire. So if you are 23 right now and you expect to retire when you're 65, you'll put that date of the calendar year into a target date fund. So for example, what a target date fund does is when you're younger, it invests your money really aggressively. So you'll have more stocks than you do bonds. And as you age and as you get closer to retirement, you have less time to make up any money that you might lose in stocks. So what it'll do is automatically convert your percentages so that you begin to have greater amounts of bonds and a little bit less amounts of stocks. So it does that automatically. You don't have to go in and buy, sell, trade. It does it for you. So that's something that we really recommend. I'm seeing that there's lots of great input. from all the peer coaches in the chat box.
Yeah, we have another question. If you're financially secure and do not need most of your money anytime soon, now in a money market account in anticipation of such a downturn, and have money to invest, what proportions of your funds should you invest to sufficiently diversify your investments now that the stock market is down? Or should one go to a robo-advisor or robo-call to answer that question, as there are many other parameters to consider?
So I'm going to jump in just really quick. If you have 6 to 9 months of living expenses saved in a high yield savings account right now, we recommend then slowly starting to invest some of your money if you know that you will have a secure source of income moving forward beyond that. So if you are looking to begin investing and investing in something that's diversified right now, as Jasmine mentioned, we recommend something like an exchange traded fund, which basically is a fund where you can invest in several different types of stocks for several different types of businesses. That way you're not putting all your money into Disney, let's say, or all your money into Amazon, but your money is being invested amongst, 500, 300 different companies. So another major one that we recommend is called the S&P 500. So SPY is the ticker that you would search to look at how much it would cost to buy a share of it. SPY follows the 500 top largest companies right now in the stock market. So these are all ways to begin investing in a way that's a little more safe, because if one company drops, you have 499 other companies to kind of catch you if you were to fall. And you can invest in ETFs based on different parts of the financial market. So if you're really passionate about tech and the tech industry is something that really strikes you, you can look up ETFs that are available in the tech industry. So that's what we would recommend if you're a beginning investor. I hope that answered your question. And as Jasmine mentioned, we have investing one-on-one coaching sessions on Mondays 1 to 3 and Wednesdays 1:30 to 3:30, where you can sit down with some of our peer coaches and ask any questions you might have about investing. I like to call it the I word. If it's not something that you necessarily talked about growing up or had families who taught you about investing, it can seem really scary to start thinking about what this means. I know I can definitely relate to it. When I first started learning about it, it was scary, but it's really the door that you can enter to help you start building wealth for yourself and for your family to come. All right. Well, we're about at 1 minute until our session is over. Again, we highly encourage, if you have any more questions, to sign up for a one-on-one appointment through our website, which is www.financialwellness.ucla.edu. There's a tab to make an appointment with a coach. We will also be hosting various virtual workshops to come. You will receive slides from this virtual workshop, as well as a worksheet that Leanne had shared. And we will also send you a recording of this workshop, which will be posted on our YouTube channel that we created last week, which will have all the different virtual workshops that we have recorded and posted onto there. Thank you all so much. We hope you stay happy and healthy and safe. And we would love to see you virtually in our coaching sessions. We appreciate each and every one of you for being here. Way to go.